Welcome to the E Free Lethbridge podcast. It's so great that you're joining us this evening as we do this live. I think we only have a few more weeks of this live, but again, we are live. It's so great that you're joining us. With me, we've got back from a long, do we call it a hiatus? Is that what it's called? Yeah. I don't really know. Sure. Back from a long hiatus, the most community-minded person I know, the service pastor for the 9 a.m. service, 11 a.m. service, Mark Dick.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Welcome back, Mark Dick.
Yeah, and there's a 9 a.m. service for you to be at now.
That's right.
Awesome. Yeah,
there.
I really wanted Mark on the podcast specifically because he's also a Canucks fan, and we're the only Canadian team left in the playoffs, and I just want to rub that in your face. Well, I guess
Stars.
Glenda's just like, go team, go.
No, I got assigned a team.
Who is it?
Yeah, they're out too.
Winnipeg.
They were Winnipeg.
Winnipeg, remember, guys?
Yeah,
they're gone a while ago.
They're not in anymore.
Darn it.
Yeah, we've got the Wonder Woman extraordinaire, Glenda Postman.
Hi.
Hey.
And we have the lighthearted Jeremy Light.
Nice.
Hey, everybody.
So we have a packed show for you guys. So we're going to kick things off quick with a fun morning question. So today's fun morning question: would you rather win an Olympic medal? There's three options here: Olympic medal, a Nobel Peace Prize, or an Academy Award. And then I'm going to ask you, like, in what genre, or like for what? Like, why would you win the award?
Okay. This one's easy for me. I think I would go with the Olympic medal of some kind. I think I would choose that because I'm not artistically inclined. So the Academy Award would be a long ways, either acting or whatever. Then I don't think my mind works in Nobel Peace Prize ways. And I'd like to win a medal. That would be fun.
What are you going to do? In what? Are you going to pole vault? What are you going to do?
No, it'd be something like triple jump or something fun like that. I don't know. It gets like
fun? Triple jump?
It's more like an Olympic sport. Or is that
just like, it is.
Or it would be something like rowing or something. I don't know. Those are like fun things.
Nobody even knows who the rowers are.
You know what?
Lowman.
Alex Van Heerden. No,
Vancouverden.
There you go.
Yeah. I know them all.
Wow.
Come on, get with the program.
Yeah. Hey.
Wowzers. That's incredible.
So that's what I would pick.
Yeah, I'm Olympic medal too, for sure. And I think the reason the reason would be like, because you get to I would do it in a team sport, so probably, and I'd say rowing as well would be maybe one of the team sports I would do. Yep, I'd be on your team, and then we could celebrate together, and that would be part of it. One, you get to celebrate together. Two, it's like not voted on; it's just you win or you don't. And three, I think it'd be awesome to stand with like a team of people and hear the national anthem being played for you. That'd be incredible. And you get the like Olympic tattoo, which
of course you would
be an Olympian.
You could do that anyway.
No, you can't do it if you're not a real Olympian.
Okay.
Bad taste.
Bad taste. Oh, sorry. I think you should guess what I'm going to say.
You're going to pick Olympic medal because you like synchronized swimming.
No,
running.
Olympic
long
medal.
Running and hiking.
No, I would not pick an Olympic medal. Do you know how much sweat people have to do? It's a lot. No, not Olympic medal.
Academy Award?
I watched that show on Netflix called Athlete A. So I would have said Olympic medal in gymnastics, but now I am very anti-gymnastics.
Oh.
I feel like you should be against gymnastics after watching that.
I know, that's why I said I'm anti-gymnastics.
No, but
not against the sport.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Just the American gymnastics team. Okay, I would pick... Wait, I forgot we can't filter. Okay.
There's no cutting in this.
Let's save this, and you just tell us what you're going to win your thing in.
I would pick the Nobel Peace Prize. Who would not pick the Nobel Peace Prize? I feel like it's the clear winner.
In your mind. Yeah, pick that.
I feel like people have won the Nobel Peace Prize for like I'd like to have peace someday, and they're like, oh, sure, here you have a prize.
Yeah.
I could name some previous winners that I feel that about, but it gets political, so let's not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like that's a cool thing to know about. Not Academy Award, that'd be the least favorite. I don't want to act.
I mean, it would be cool if I was into that, but
If
yeah,
I was into that.
acting.
Really into that.
Absolute
acting.
No, not about the piece.
I mean, if I was into
It was into peace. If I liked peace, I'd want
If I was
that.
into peace, I would totally choose that, but I'm not. So
Are you? Please don't say you're gonna say. Are you gonna say Olympic too?
okay,
Yeah,
now I feel bad because
No, you could say it.
my automatic thing would be, oh well, I just want to be like an Olympic hockey player because that's like
Oh.
what I'd want. But like, so there's a little piece of me that like wants the fame side of things, and so like I would like to be in the Olympics. I definitely would want to do some sort of winter sport, probably hockey or curling, because those are some of my favorite ones to watch. But you know, I would be fine with figure skating, bobsledding, like any of those sports that people just really get into, which is any winter sport in Canada.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, I think that I would also go with Glenda. I thought about this for a little bit, and I thought, what one's better for the world? And I think I'll do the Nobel Peace Prize. I would sacrifice the Olympics for the Nobel Peace Prize.
You're a noble.
That's really
man.
big of you. That's
Yeah.
really big of you, Levi. Plus,
But
you
if
get
I
$1 million.
could, I would do
Don't
both.
forget, he started saying, "I'd like to win a medal, so I'd be famous."
Yeah.
But
Well,
he
you're
sacrificed it all for peace.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There you go.
and
I
you
feel
could be
like-
famous.
Yeah, if you
Well, really? Like, can you name any Nobel Peace Prize winners? Yeah, super famous.
Probably more famous Olympic athletes. But nobody wants to like swim. What about like Michael Phelps? Maybe
Well,
swimming would be the best one.
Mm,
Never thought
It's
of rowing.
really
I didn't-
hard.
I never
I
watched
would
rowing.
say the short track speed skating. You know, when you like do the relay and you like push each other, and it's like roller derby on a
I
that'd be
don't
fun.
understand a thing about that.
It's so fun.
They
That's
lollygag around
No,
and then they go fast.
no, not in short track.
Oh,
didn't Malala won a Nobel Peace Prize,
oh yeah.
Oh
I think
yeah,
so.
yeah. There you go.
and I think some sort of, or it was a group Nobel Peace Prize, but an organization that fought against something to do with Syrian chemical warfare.
The white helmet, was it the white helmet?
I don't know, something like that. Yeah. So yeah,
I
I
feel like
go
you're
along with
Googling
it.
Yeah. You're
Obama
Googling it.
won one.
I am not Googling it. Malala was in Pakistan, and when I was in Pakistan, she was like a mountain range away, like where, so I
I
feel
think
like
Jimmy Carter. That's the only one I can think of. Jimmy Carter didn't Jimmy Carter win a Peace Prize?
I don't know.
I don't know.
My
don't know, I'm winning
mother-in-law
a medal.
loved Jimmy Carter. I'm pretty sure he won a. But I don't know. You can Google.
Somebody,
should Google.
somebody's gonna do some fact checking
Yeah.
for us, and they can
Yeah.
put it in
Fact
the
check.
chat. Yeah,
Let
okay.
us know. Give us a nice breakdown of who won the Nobel Peace Prizes
There's
in the
anybody
last 10
famous,
years. Is it multiple a year? I don't know. Is it
I
just
don't
1 year?
So if you're really about peace,
We clearly know a lot about this. Very
Yeah.
educated folks.
So I think that wraps up our fun morning question. It's time to get to the message. So this week we had Jeremy preaching for us, and Jeremy's on the podcast. So that's awesome. I just saw he has his Bible. So he's ready to continue the conversation. I also have my Bible right beside me, just in case. We were preaching out of Galatians 3 and 4, I believe. I don't know. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, Galatians 3 and 4. Galatians 3 talks about how we are God's children through faith. And just a little reminder, God is our Father, not our employer. That was a big part of the message today. So, Jerry, you talked about how we can see ourselves as children of God or slaves to God. What has been your guys' default?
Yeah, my default has definitely been to I totally get Jesus is Lord. He's King. He's Master. God is, and in other passages, Paul talks about us being slaves for Christ and servants for Christ, and to God. I totally get that mentality, or not totally, I guess, probably not, but that's where I would lean towards more so. But that's part of the reason the stories of like the prodigal son and the kingdom parties are so compelling to me, because those are not the ways that I would naturally see God. And that's part of the reason as well that I love Jesus, because he shows me that heart or that side of who God is.
Interesting. I would say probably for myself, I would have seen myself as a child of God as opposed to like a slave growing up. That would have been my default. But I wonder, as I think about it now, I wonder if I was modeled the freedom that comes with knowing who God is. It wasn't about a legal. The faith models in my life talked about and shared the freedom of God and that what he brings in that. And so I wonder if that I would lean that way because of that, as opposed to, a slave.
I think too, the slave analogy lives pretty strong in me, or can. And I was struck today, like God didn't set me free to bind me to a whole other thing. And I think maybe I thought I was a slave to other things because like my time was no longer my own. So I owed it to the church. I owed it to, I don't know, maybe this is weird because you guys are all men, but I think I like felt like I owed it to my husband. Like I was his helper. And so like I owed it to him. And I think I was still trying to pay a debt that literally I can't pay or earn my way, dump all my energy into those things. I remember, Keenan and I did, when we first started at Eat Free, we did everything. We didn't say no to anything. We taught Sunday school, we led kids club, we like helped in the kitchen. Like we just did everything. And I remember feeling like I had to start saying no just to like refresh myself. And I felt so bad like that. I'm like, yeah, but we're not saved just to like give into my own wishes and desires. Like I owe this now because I belong to God. It's just like a new form of, I just traded it in, what a new form of bondage. So.
I think when you were just talking, I think one of the things that's interesting is that we feel like we have to, you said something about feel like we have to repay a debt. And in my mind, I think right away, there isn't a debt. Does that make like there actually is like a legit, like this lie or whatever that we believe is actually a complete lie, because there is no debt that we're repaying. It was paid. Like that was just I think many people probably, including myself at times, would have said the same. Those are similar sort of words. It's good.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we make this frame of what is like good. So it's not even that we have, and maybe I'll speak personally in this, but and it may resonate with you. It's not even that I've been set free from a system of rules and now I'm a slave to God. It's that I've just swapped rules, and I think these ones are more holy or God honoring than the previous ones, or will make me good or better than the previous set. And I think that's what I find, because I love like, what are the expectations? What should I do? I like a good job description, clear directions. I love doing Lego because you just follow the step-by-step stuff and you end up with this piece of things, right? Like I like to break things down like that. And there's the challenge of following Jesus is that there's elements where there is sort of these step-by-step pieces, because we as a human race have been doing it so long, and it's recorded for us other people's experiences, and yet it's not step by step at all, and it's not this like abstract system of here's what you have to do as a Christian. We're following a person, we're honoring a person, and for me that's like thrilling and scary all at the same time. It's sort of like leaving my safety zone.
Well, and it's like you remind us too, like it's not because of all of these things. It's not because of all the ways that we think we're in. It's not because all the things we think we can do or we bring to the table, or it's not because of that. Yet there is this delight that God has for us. And I think sometimes that takes a little while to meld into your brain.
Mm.
And actually, I hadn't really thought of it until just a little bit after I mostly read your sermon notes, but after reading that, I was actually really struck by the idea of gender, and I was thinking about that. Like, do I think as a woman that I had to earn that? And I actually think for a number of years I did, before I realized, like God didn't make me just to help my husband. Like He delights in me and in by myself, me.
Yeah.
And actually that felt really significant to me. And I remember there's a passage in Numbers, I was reminded of it this week, that Numbers 27, it talks about, it's the children of the daughters of Zelophehad.
Yeah, Zelophehad.
Yeah,
I know.
Right. And they go to Moses and they say, hey, actually, our father's gone. Can we have the inheritance? We are the daughters. And then Moses goes to the Lord, and the Lord says, this is right. They also receive the inheritance. And that just clicked into me. Like, I also receive the inheritance.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to come through something else. I get it too.
That's good.
So that kind of leads me to the next question here. What things do heirs receive that you receive? Yeah, so not only are we beloved children of God, but we're also an heir. And so what things do heirs receive that you receive?
And this was like, as I was getting ready for this week, this was blowing my mind in the sense, like we're not the lesser heirs. This was blowing my mind that we don't have to wrestle over the like third of the inheritance that's left over after Jesus, who is the only begotten Son of God, gets. We are co-heirs with Jesus, and that and then the fact that at the end Paul's like using the first person or the second person singular, like, you are the heir, you are the heir, you are the heir, which he doesn't use very often, that second person singular. So that was just blowing my mind. So thinking through, like, man, like, so then in the context, particularly the promises to Abraham are all mine. That the blessings that are given to him. No, obviously I'm not going to inherit the like physical land or the promised land, but in terms of like part of God's family, part of God's plan, part of God's purpose, I play a role in that. And it reminded me of an old Rich Mullins song where he talks about that one star Abraham saw in the night sky was lit for me. That right from the very beginning, God had me as part of His plan. And just thinking about that has that's one of the things that I get as an heir, is this purpose, this I'm part of God's family, but perpetuating God's mission, God's family line in this as well.
That's cool.
Do you think too that like we sometimes are like weighing checks and balances and saying, okay, well, God, like, you gave me this, I'll give you this, but then things didn't really turn out in this thing, so you kind of owe me a little bit here. Like, I think there's a way that we can like run a tit for tat, this for that kind of check
in relationship with God, you mean?
Yeah. Like, I think when something bad happens and the like floor falls out from under you, you're like, well, God, wait a minute, like, do you owe me?
Yeah, and I'd say that that goes back to my view of God as well, right? In terms of seeing Him more as an employer than a father. And so I deserve some time off, and I'm looking for the paycheck, and forgetting that everything I have is from Him. So
we live differently like that, don't we?
Would you say being called a child of God, if you even think of it that way, if you read it and know that, and even responding to God as a father, we probably do we probably did exactly that with our parents, right? Well, wait a second, I did this, you owe me this. It's like it's not even as a servant or whatever of God. It's actually as a child of God. This is how we respond to our own child of our own father or parent. We would respond the same way. So that actually is it's an interesting similarity, right? That we do it that way.
It's a strong sense of fairness. Like, I did this last time. I emptied the dishwasher last time. It's my sister's turn.
Remember, God, I lived through last time. Yeah, exactly. I think for me, there's like a piece in that child of God or the heir that we get identity. You know, like there's like a legit stamp or whatever. Like this is who you are. That, you know, we obviously like that. I actually love that we are not third partners in whatever's left over of the inheritance, but we get it all. Like but the idea of an identity. We are called children of God. We live in a world where people seek an identity of some kind. We get an opportunity to pick one of three things, and fame or some sort of something. We're like, yeah, that's actually not bad. I'll pick that. Regardless, like that's where we want to be identified as something. And I think as being called a child of God or an heir of God's, we have an identity that's inherently comes along with that, which is, I think, pretty sweet.
Yeah. And that's I like that, Mark, because that's what I'm trying to get across to my kids when we do the liturgy, and what I was trying to get across to the church too, right? Like, who am I? My identity is formed by my relationship with God. That, like, the identity question is answered fully and completely in that God is my Father, so I'm His child, and my confidence is that He loves me. That's it. That doesn't change, right? If we look at Romans 8, what can separate us from love? Nothing. So I don't have to. This is my identity. And then to go to I was struck by this in the prodigal son story, where the prodigal comes home and he's like, I'm not worthy to be called your son. Make me your hired servant, right? So and I changed my identity. And the dad's like, no, this is my son who was lost. So it absolutely reaffirms that. But then he does the same thing with the elder son. He comes in and he says, the elder son actually says, I've slaved for you because you haven't even paid me. And so I'm a slave. And the dad calls him son as well. Son, we had to celebrate, and just reaffirms and said, like, you're mine. You're my son. And that was really important too. I like that, Mark. That's really cool.
I feel like, just kind of going back to the very first question that I asked, I really relate to what Glenda was saying about, the slavery part. I feel like, even though I know that I'm a child of God, and I'd love to answer that question by saying I can see myself as a child of God, I feel like my tendency is always to go back into the slavery side of things. Like, I've got this set of tasks that I have to do for my master, and I got to get it done, and I need to almost earn my righteousness, like my own righteousness, and I have to earn God's favor. Jerry, you reminded us you absolutely dishonor God when you trade your freedom for slavery. And that's something that I find myself kind of going back into. And I think a lot of people do that. They trade this freedom that we've been given for slavery. So why are we tempted to do this? Why are we tempted to muster up our own righteousness and earn God's favor?
I think that's part of where we live too. You have to earn everything you get. Very few people give any, they don't give things. You don't get things for free anymore. Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no.
We've made it part of Scripture. God helps those who help themselves. You got to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. Yeah. These are all Western culture, and I'd say particularly kind of Southern Albertan type values. Yeah.
It's really the original fall of man too, right? Like, I don't need to do this to have relationship with God. I can do this on my own. This is my terms. Like, it's our pride and our independence that ushered this in, and really is still my battle all the time. Like, anytime I want to stand on my own, I want to stand on my own 2 feet and stand strong. I don't like to lean in. So kneeling is a whole other battle. Like, I just want to stand. I want to stand on my own. So I feel like I keep God sometimes takes my knees out from under me, and then the relationship and experience that you have in those times, I think that's probably why God speaks so loud in sorrow, because we can't stand on our own.
Yeah, and I'd agree with you, Glenda. I think like the sense of pride and like I earned what I got. You know what I mean? I worked hard for it. I also think it's really easy to keep score when you go to a system of slavery and a standard of righteousness, a code of conduct. And so I can, and this is where pride again comes in, but it's easy to know who's in and who's out, because if they don't keep the rules, they're out. Or if they don't keep them as good as I do, they're not as good as me.
Yeah.
And when it just comes down to relationship, like who has the best relationship? Well, yeah, you can look at some fruit, of people's marriages or families and be like, oh yeah, they must have a really good family. But it's way harder to measure that. It's so intangible, and so it's simpler. It's simpler,
Yeah, and
but it's really dangerous.
We want to measure because then we can control, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the sick part about that, I find even for myself, if I slide into that, it now I'm prideful, now I resent other people, now I'm annoyed at people and want to push myself harder, or whatever the mechanisms are to get over those sort of things. So that's like this slippery sort of, when we start to do that, we not only feel like God owes us something, we can play those games with him, but then even in like regular relationship, we destroy relationships because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it becomes enslaving, because like this is what the phrase in the NIV where it talks about we were in slavery under the elemental spiritual forces of the world. That just just captures my attention. But absolutely, because it's like, well, you can just work a little bit harder and you can be better. You can just do a little bit more and you can be better. Or you're better than this person, so you deserve to engage in this, whatever it is, and those types of things. And it's ridiculous when you think about it, but in the game, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's the one thing that really will affect your spiritual life if you can understand how loved you are.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like over and over again, like how just beloved we are by God. I wonder if if I had a real understanding of what that is. I just wonder what that does. I mean, I just think that changes your spiritual life, your life with God.
But so Glenda, just thinking of your story, even, wouldn't that be part of your story? Like, that's why you follow Christ today, wouldn't it be? Like, wouldn't you say that part of it is?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, I had a really good family that showed me this kind of love. And so thinking of that love, like perfected, and my dad is a real example to me. I love him, but he's never said a critical word about me ever, ever. And it's just complete delight. And I look at like my kids or grandkids and think like if they only knew how much I loved them. Like, how you just feel like that for your kids, and then your kids have kids, and then they're like, oh, just this picture of, you just can't be separated. Like the heart of my kids, it cannot be separated from me. It can't. When they're grieving, I'm grieving. When they feel loved and overjoyed, I feel loved and overjoyed. When someone loves them, I love that other person.
Yeah.
Like, we're just tied so in the heart with our children. And I think, oh, that's how God loves me. Like, so tied. When I am sorrowed, he is sorrowing. I wonder if I can, grasp that sometimes. But.
And I didn't mean to say that your parents didn't love you. I just mean like you like to follow God.
Yeah.
No, that would have been, that's what I meant. Sorry if I was misunderstood.
No, I understood that.
Yeah.
And I think, like, Glenn, I think you're onto something for sure, because Paul fights against this vehemently, this idea that you have to earn, that God's favor and God's love is in any way earned, and just keeps on coming back to like, how did you gain life? Why are you now trying to like go back to systems and rules if you gained life through the Spirit, through this this relationship with Jesus, why are you going back to this? Don't you remember what it was like just to experience the love of Jesus and the life that brought to you and on all these things? So I think you're absolutely right. It's transformative when we start to get a taste of, and maybe that's why he prays in Galatians, like, I pray that you would know the depths and the height and the length and the breadth of this love that is unknowable. I pray that you would know it. Yeah.
And I just reminded, like, the little tiny, all we need is a little tiny mustard seed side faith.
Yeah.
Like, and this is what we get. Little tiny, the smallest of seeds. That's all we need. Anyway.
Well, that's awesome. That's good insight.
So you bring honor to God, not by placing yourself under the rules, but by hearing and following the Spirit. So how is God asking you to honor him?
Ooh, this is the good part because we get to do. Just kidding. I think, like, it was really weird because every once in a while we have these breakout times in prayer group, like when we pray in the morning as staff. And so one of the things that we did some breakout, and we were supposed to ask these questions. And so I remember it was Jeff and Heather and I in a group, and Jeff said, Glenda, what do you hope people say about you at your funeral? And I've been thinking I'm like, darn, I should have changed my answer. But my immediate response was that anybody across my path felt loved. And I was like, darn it, that wasn't a good Jesus answer. I should have said that I live for God. I don't know. But sorry about that, Jeff, if you're listening. But I thought, those things are kind of assumed. But I think it really just changes the way we love people. Like, if this is how I am loved, then how I look at people has got to be different. Like, we have got to be so much more than tolerant. We're going to be loving. We've got to be so much more than doing tit for tat. We're going to forgive radically. So I don't know. I just think it changes the way we love people.
Yeah, that's 100%. I would agree. And like, honor him in those sort of places that people, I believe that God puts people in my path for his purpose and his glory. And so that's how I want to, and I don't, I'm broken. I want to love everybody like they're a child of God, so that they too have that same stamp of who they belong to, that they're an heir to him, that their identity belongs to God, that God is the creator. Those are the eyes that I want for the people that I see as well. And so similar, probably, I wouldn't have been as quick on my feet as you would have been. I must have missed this prayer thing. But that I would say something similar now. If I would say that how God is asking me to honor him is to treat his creation the way that he treats me, or the way that he loves me, or the way that he loves, which
you just get to reflect that back, right?
Should be able to. Yeah.
The thing that man, I can't remember. Oh, you know what? It was when I was doing. We normally do Lectio on our sermon passages, and it was during the summer for this one, and so nobody was around. Like, there was nobody around, and so it was just me. So I'm like, I'm going to take the time and just do it for my passage, and it was just a great, like, God was just speaking to me in this. And one of the things he brought to mind was the story of Mary and Martha. And I mean, not rocket science at all. We know the story, but he just said to me, like, if I am your father, not your employer, then you can sit at my feet. And that's actually what I want from you. I don't want you to do things for me all the time. And I'm a bit of a doer, and I come by that, I think, nature or nurture. I grew up in a household of people who do for love. That's how they express love. But he just let me know, like, yeah, when Mary chose the better, it wasn't just better for her, it's what I wanted for her as well. It's just to sit at my feet and spend time. I want time with you. And so that's something that I'm this week was not a good week to put that into practice, but very full, busy week. But it's something that just reminded of now that, yeah, okay, I need to work on that. Not just fill my schedule for Jesus, but spend time.
It's just an interesting. Go ahead. When I feel like we talk about, and came up in my devotions this week at some point, but we talk about our the faith, why we do things, that we can't have faith without works, and so I think that doing things for God, doing things that we do is actually not bad, and it comes back to heart and why and our motivation and those sort of things. But it's just interesting because I know you, Jeremy, and when you say I didn't have the time to do that, I wasn't Martha or it was Mary or whatever this week, it's because you actually were doing the things that God was calling you. Like out of love for God, I would probably look at your schedule and say, see all of these things this week because you have whatever going on and speaking, which is probably normally fills your week a bit fuller, but cause us to choose things that are because of our love. The things we do flow from a love for God, of God, whatever. So we often put them on like ends of the spectrum. You can't, yeah.
I think you hit it right in terms of the motivation, and my motives are always mixed. And I'm hoping that as I grow in my faith, they'll become more and more compelled by love and less compelled by earning, and not just God's favor. Because one of the spiritual forces or systems of this world that threatens to enslave me is earning the favor of others as well, right? So being well thought of by others, and so that's something I need to watch out for in my life for sure. And I know that like for me, it's not very often all one or all the other. Those motives are mixed. So even when I stand up to preach, yes, I want to glorify God, absolutely. But there's a big part of me that really hopes that people like it too, and that they tell me that they do. Those types of things. And so I've just, I'm not satisfied with that, but I'm not letting that debilitate me. So I'd say even in my week of busyness, yeah, of course, lots of things that God, put on my plate, and I'm doing it because I'm serving Him. And part of His kingdom, but there is also an element of that's driven by earning favor, and I need to watch out for that for sure.
How about you, Levi? How would you answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I really relate to what Jared was just saying. I think how I would answer it is willingness. How is God asking me to honor Him is with willingness. I was at a missions conference that was part of Briarcrest's thing. Like they did a missions conference every year. It kind of adapted while I was there, but there was one of the speakers at that thing basically was asking whoever was willing to go. And it wasn't necessarily go overseas, although I was in the middle of my degree to go teach overseas. And I was planning on going overseas. So I was like in the mindset of, I'm going, I'm willing. And I signed a card, and I had to write down a couple people to keep me accountable on the card. And so I wrote down one guy's name that is one of the most, in my opinion, radical believers that lived in Karimport. He also lives in Turkey. And I didn't end up going overseas, but then I've been wrestling with this. What does willingness look like to serve, to reach out, to do missions in Canada? And I saw him this February. He was back in Karimport when we went there before COVID lockdown. Crazy to think that I was at an event with 1,000 youth. But I saw him. I actually I was at a seminar, and I pulled in, there was one seat available, and it's beside him. And I thought, oh no, I don't want to sit there, because I was worried, because then I was now I'm going to be held accountable to this card that's in my Bible that says that I needed to be willing to go. And we had a great conversation. We talked, and he asked me about where I was at. Was I willing? And he held me accountable. And so I got to tell him what I was doing in Lethbridge. And he said, oh man, you are so unlucky. And I'm like, why? He's just I think Lethbridge is probably one of the hardest areas to share the gospel with people. I'd rather be in like North Korea or Turkey than in Lethbridge. And I was like, wow, that is such a different response than I was. And he said, thank you for being willing to go. And I'm like, whoa, this has changed me. So I think just this willingness, but like Jeremy, I have to check my motives on how seen is my willingness. Like missions trip 2 years ago with the high school kids. This is embarrassing for me to even share in public, but so there's all these different groups. So like you break into 3 or 4 groups, and then the groups do different things around Vancouver. And my group got chosen to go to what they were calling like one of the dirtier locations. In the past, it hasn't been fun. There's bed bugs there. And we, for a whole day, scrubbed walls of this shelter. And it was not seen by anyone. It was not a good job. And I, in the moment, wasn't willing. It felt like I wasn't willing. We got home and I cried. I cried that night because I was like, this work was only seen by God, like, and the rest of my team. Like, that's it. There was no one watching. And yeah, I want to be willing for those. I want to be willing for that. And not have it be a rule that I'm just following.
That's a good example, Levi.
Yeah. Sorry, I took a little bit too long there, but
no, thanks for sharing that. That's good.
We are going to move to the hot seat. This is a time, if you would like to ask a question, you can go to menti.com and use the code 9788312. The code keeps getting longer and longer, I've noticed. 9788312. And you can ask a question there. It's totally anonymous. You can also throw a question into the comments if you would like. I'm just going to pull that up there. Yeah, perfect. So there's the code if you would like. We do have one question that has come in for the hot seat. And so the question is, what will the fall look like at E-Free?
Oh, man.
Falling leaves.
Yeah.
With our 3 or 4 trees.
Some snow at some time.
You know what? We are like, I think sometimes people have the idea like, oh yeah, we're letting our feet off the gas. There's no coasting, folks. So trying to figure out a way. I mean, we are not a church who wants to do programs just to do programs. We do things and give opportunities because we want people to have meaningful interaction, bump into each other, and really grow in their relationship with God. So I think we are trying to figure out ways to do that. And we've talked about bringing things down to our meaningful core. So what are the things that are meaningful, and then how are different ways that we want to accomplish it? So we're talking about, like in women's ministries, we're talking about discipleship groups and still finding ways for moms to connect, and finding ways for people to invite their neighbors into like community with them. So I think we're doing the same things we were doing before. Things just might shift a little bit. And if some things are like, hopefully some things are falling away that weren't helpful or productive, and then new ideas can come too. So it pushes us all a little bit creatively, I think.
Yeah, and we're running into some challenges. I think on Wednesday nights we had 6 or 7 different programs at the church.
You could not get a room.
5:45 till after 9 o'clock. So 6 or 7 different programs. All, we're clearing out of one room so another group can come in. And we're just not going to be able to do that given the restrictions on number of people inside in a gathering and the cleaning that's required in between the groups that come in. So how do we make that shift? How do we think differently? We've been talking about this for a while. I would say one thing that we keep coming back to, and as an anchor, is our mission and vision and our direction statements. So what we're shifting now is more how we'll do things than what we're doing or the direction that we're headed. It just will look a little bit differently. And this kind of goes to what Levi was talking about earlier too. I think like before, we could have a program at the church and we would say like we had 100 people out, it was a great success, or we have this many people registered and they're all here, and we're going to have to find different ways to measure success because we can't do it the same. And we shouldn't have been necessarily measuring just numbers of people, but it was easy. And so we're going to have to find a new way to measure what are we accomplishing, what we want to accomplish. And so these are going to be some of the things that we wrestle with through the fall, for sure.
Yeah, I really like what Glenda was talking about with we're going back to our most fruitful core, I forget what the exact words you said.
Me too.
Something about fruitful core, and we're reducing down to that, or refining. And I do want to say, this is something that we were doing before COVID.
Right.
For all the people who are like, oh, they're doing that because of COVID. COVID's forcing them to reduce down to their fruitful core. That's not the case at all. Actually, all of our ministries put together like these ministry action plans to reduce down to our fruitful core so that we have room to maybe take on a few new things that would help us expand our ministries. And I think in a lot of ways, COVID might be helping us with that. Not in all the ways. I'm not saying COVID is great. I'm just saying on the lighter side, on the bright side, COVID, it has helped in a lot of ways, forcing us to reduce down to our most fruitful core. And
for sure,
I'm excited for a lot of our ministries that are maybe moving more away from. I hope this slogan isn't copyrighted by Jer, but we're moving away from programmatic and moving towards pastoral, and wanting to see people shepherded, and that's really our focus. And we do really rely on our mission and vision that's already been put out there. It's on our website, our direction statements. That's where we're going with things. So that's what the fall will look like. Amazing ministry is what the fall will look like.
And if you have questions or concerns, like talk to one of your pastors. They'd love to chat with you about that. So we're passionate about this. So
if I could put a request for prayer in there too, I think, Glenda, I think you were talking about this at one point. I can't remember.
Decision fatigue, it's a thing.
Yeah, and that we all have experienced COVID as well as like personally in our families. So not necessarily because somebody's been diagnosed, but we're helping our families, our kids, our relations and neighbors and all these things. Just like everybody as well. And so there is some like fatigue that comes with that, the same kind of level of stress and not knowing. That's all happening as well. So
yeah, definitely. Well, I think let's move to community time. I'm so excited for today's community time. There's a question in here that I've been pumped up since someone wrote it in our little group chat. I've been pumped up, and then Jeremy wrote it. Then Glenda was like, I wanted to write that question. and I just said, like, I'm excited for this question. So we'll get to that question very quickly. But just to kick things off with our community time, I think sometimes we imagine the early church as this Christian-like utopia where some of the threats to community unity in the early, like, it didn't exist. Like, they're perfect and they didn't have any threats. So what are some of the threats to community and unity in the early church that you guys know of?
Yeah, in Galatia, this is the whole reason that Paul's writing the letter, is because there's this threat to unity, and it's these people coming along saying you have to keep the system of rules and regulations in order to be true Christian, to be part of God's family. And he even describes a situation where Peter is in Antioch, where Paul is, and Peter's eating with the whole family, Jew and Gentile, and then some people from Jerusalem show up that are a little bit more legalistic and conservative in their theology, and Peter separates himself from the family of God and creates a divide between the Jewish Christians and the Gentile Christians. So this is like and Paul has to like confront him. I don't think it was just like a friendly, like it was loving probably, but I imagine it got a little fiery at times. And so now you have two leaders of the church, one who walked with Jesus and one who has a mission to the Gentiles, had a vision of Jesus and his conversion, having a dispute. And I think that's a huge threat to the unity of the church.
Do you think some of that is today as well? Like, do you think that this the dividedness maybe in our churches, maybe not just our church, but dividedness in our community or our world with the different churches, is that part of it? Is like it is this similar to today? This sort of concern that Peter would have had?
Yeah, I think there's some for sure. Like, I think on both sides. So, people, I think we align with people. Just like if you look at the opening of his letter to Corinth, right? Paul's like, some of you say you're following Peter, some Apollos, some are saying you're following me, some are like, I just follow Jesus, but it's all divisive. And I think we do the same thing today. So if we want to be seen as progressive, and somebody comes up and challenges us that we're not progressive enough, we become even more so. Or if we want to be seen as conservative, we revert, or when that's challenged, we retreat even further into that. And so I think rather than in the early church there, I don't think it was easy, but Peter repents. He's like, yeah, Paul, you're right. Like, what I was doing was wrong. And even in the decision in Acts 15, I don't know, somewhere around there, where they have the Jerusalem Council, like they come to a decision together, but I think it was heated and it threatened the unity of the church. So I think this ability to have conversation and to learn from each other and to be humble with each other is really, really important.
Well, and what a shift, like in the social order, it must have been such a shift. These people who were like lived in this way, were suddenly all like, I think it reminds me of the church in Philippi, right? Like you had a jailer and you had a girl who had been cleansed of spirits, and you have Lydia. Like these people have nothing in common in their lives. And yet here they were like really bound together in this like social order. And then traditions were so woven into culture, like the tradition to like how you wiped your feet or bowed to gods, so it would have been such a different way of life. I just think, I mean, that just can't have been nice and smooth trying to figure out how to live together really and share the things that you have and worship together. And
when we even see threats of that or like hints of that in the early church. So Acts 2 is like everything, they shared everything in common. Nobody had any need. And then all of a sudden, the Greek widows aren't getting as much food as everybody else. And it's causing this dispute because they were Hellenistic Jews, Hellenistic Jewish Christians, like as opposed to Jewish Christians. There was another, thing that was separating them apart or whatever. And even the like categories that Paul lists, like Jew nor Gentile. Now you have them in the same church, slave nor free. So like in this home church, a slave who's a follower of Jesus is now coming to the communion meal as a full-on equivalent as potentially his owner or her owner, and sitting at the table, at least for that meal. And then afterwards, they're going to revert back to like, how did this work? This would be like, there's so much potential for things to go wrong. And yet Paul was convinced.
Yeah, a shift in the social order, a shift in everything. And then these people are saying, you can have this direct personal walk with God. Like this is just, it's so unique. What a shift in life and belief that Jesus brought.
I feel like, I always think this. I'm like, oh man, I should have just been born in a time with the early church. Like, so it was this utopia. That's where I want to be right now. Don't have to deal with all the politics that are going on right now. And then I'm like, okay, this is an internal conversation of Levi. Levi, just read Acts. Read Acts. Nope, no, thank you. There's so many threats to community unity, and
their life, really, the persecution came. I mean, when Nero starts burning things down of his own cities and blaming the Christians, I mean, this did not go well for them.
Yeah, exactly. So, So sometimes we think unity means we have to agree. We all have to agree about everything. Can you guys describe a time when you guys have experienced community with people you've disagreed deeply with? This is the fun question.
Yes, all the time.
Yeah, I can't think of a time when I haven't. Yeah, I think when there hasn't been disagreements. I think as far as I can remember, and deep ones like staff teams, being out at SABC on staff team there, being at college, school, family, all
dorm roommates, yeah.
I think that this is the outcome of living in broken people living together. We have not even we can disagree. We don't have to, but we have our own pride and our own self-interest. And so then sometimes we just have to live with people that we disagree with, or that it's difficult to. So I don't know. Feels like that's like a reality. Maybe it's me. You guys listed a whole bunch, so now I feel
all the time, really, all the time. And really, if we didn't know that before, then now we know it in COVID. There's so many thoughts about everything. And I feel like you have to pick all the time. Like, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And then school starts up. And then what do you think about this? And church starts up. And really, there's so many ways that we can think of these things. So we are going to disagree with each other and deeply disagree. This feels like a conviction to me. And so how am I going to live in this tension? I think we probably have to get a little bit more comfortable with tension and realize we're going to be discussing this for a long time, and we're going to have these conversations. So I don't know, maybe learning how to have them respectfully is helpful. I don't know what's helpful for you guys when you live in tension, because really staff team, we have 25 people on our staff. We would sit around the table and we would all feel a certain way about things. So it's interesting. And we have to pick one way we're going to operate. So
yeah, and I think for me, it's having a purpose that's bigger than the disagreement. So I can think of out at camp, being on the cabin leader, and in staff training, this was the time when there was a few people, there'd be some really deep theological conversations and disagreements about stuff, and yet we could remain in community through the entire summer, because what we were doing with our kids in our cabins and in chapels and things that we do, this was way more important than, the theological disagreements were important, but we had a common purpose that we rallied around. And I'd say that's sort of one of the things that we on our staff team, not just our current staff team, but through my experiences at the church over the years, there have been disagreements in theology and on things, and yet we've been able to work together, enjoy one another. And I think a lot of it comes, we see each other as people, not just our position, and we have a common purpose that we rally around, and that keeps us united.
Definitely. I'm experience a time right now. It's just, we're in community, and people, Glenn has got it. COVID is a thing right now, and it's demanding of opinion, and there's lots of differences of opinion. And I don't want to say that we're ununified. I don't think we are ununified. We are unified among our staff team with this purpose that Jeremy is talking about in mind, and that I'm not going to say trumps, because I don't want to use the word Trump, but trumps this disunity, or this. Yeah. How did he just put such a bad taste in my mouth? This one person. Sorry, everyone. See now.
Feel
there's gonna be-
opinionated about that, Levi?
Yeah.
Now
Sounds like a topic for another podcast.
yes, it's a topic for another podcast. So, one last question for you guys: what is one thing each of you hopes happens through your community or through our community parties in September?
I wasn't
your
done talking
party,
about the
yeah.
last question. Can I just say one more thing?
Sure, you can say one more thing.
Okay, I was just thinking about this. Like, do you think that you can tell? You can tell when like somebody loves you, is invested, and wants to listen to you. I think you can tell. Can't you tell? Because I think that really matters. Like, we can disagree, and we have lots of relationships where we disagree with other people, but when we're in it, we are in this with you. We're going to live in the question with you. I'm willing to stay in it with you, but I'm committed to our relationship and I love you. I think it feels different when you feel that. I don't know. Do you guys think that's true?
I think that's true some of the time. It's not always. I think people don't always know how to share their feelings or thoughts with people, and that can come across as the opposite of what you're describing, and it might not be their intention. It might just be a difference of personality or not quite learning. I don't know. I feel like I'm guilty of this because I sometimes go into conversations head on and I'll say things bluntly, and that can come across as me not listening or listening in a loving way to the other side. So then I have to kind of make up for it and make sure I show people. Actually,
but you're
no,
concerned
I do care.
with that. Like,
yeah.
I've disagreed with you about some things, Levi.
Yeah.
And like, we have a great relationship, right? We have respect for one another. We have care for each other. We care about each other's families. Like, I think people know that. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
It's just swirling through my head.
But no, I agree with you. I'm trying to think. Like, I don't think it's always the case. It's something that you do have to learn how to share and care. I don't know.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Continue on. Community parties.
Community parties. What's one thing each of you hopes happens through our community parties, or in particular, your community party? Am I allowed to say that? I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think even just like gathering some of the people. I live in Coaldale, so just even gathering some people that we worship together, but the gathering together in one place here aren't necessarily like parts of friend groups or like have common places, but that we live here in Coaldale, and so that's in common. Maybe gathering people comes at an interesting time too, when we haven't gathered a lot, and we sort of, if we see people, it's kind of random. So that, I think the like gathering of people, which feels a bit scary a bit, but the gathering of people that we see sometimes, it will be fun. I think that will be like a cool, just a community build piece.
Yeah, Mark. I hear the nervousness part of it every time there's like a mini outbreak somewhere, or and people are following the protocols or whatever. I'm like, oh man, are we doing the right thing? So keep praying for wisdom, everybody. We're committed, but we're not like locked in. If we need to adjust, we will. But one of the things, so aside from no outbreaks, one of the things I'm really hoping for community parties is just something I've experienced when we've been doing Lakeview gatherings in our neighborhood here in Lakeview, is just this sense of like, oh, you live in this neighborhood, or like those kinds of looking these things of connection and commonality or community, really, that maybe aren't obvious on the surface. And just these, I'm just hoping that when we have ours, that there's those moments of connection for people. Just, oh, I've seen you around, or you live here, like just those kinds of things. Just that simple. That's what I'm looking for.
I think sometimes like I feel like sometimes my lenses need to get cleared to realize like where God has placed me. And so I think that's the piece, like just to have a fresh perspective again of, oh, I've been placed in this neighborhood for a purpose. And so who are the people? Who are the people who God has placed me, and what's his purpose in those things? So feels like an exciting thing.
What's one thing that I hope happens? I hope that my community has a party. That's one thing that I hope. I don't know. I think a little bit of what Jared's saying. I don't know who's in my community. I know a few, but I don't know a lot. And I kind of, to be honest, I live close to one of the boundaries that's set. And so I'm like, I don't really know, like, if we just went through our alley and onto the other side of the street, we would be in a different community. And so I'm like, yeah, I would have expected that was our community. So now I'm like trying to figure out like who's there and how can we all work together to do something and hopefully impact our community in the long run. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see more things like that on the north side. Because I think that, not that the north side is the bad side, but I think we need it. Like, we need something like that. I know a lot of communities are very connected in other parts of the city, but we don't really have that same feel. But I mean, we're getting it. My street is getting it. I know my neighbors. I know the people across the street. I know 2 doors down. Like, we're starting to get it. I'm like, maybe we could just start block and then like, I don't know, grow and grow and grow. So yeah,
that's cool.
So yeah, that's what I hope. We have a party. That's what I hope.
Yeah.
That's safe. Yes.
Yeah. Keep praying, people.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I guess if you're still interested about community parties, there will be information coming. I know it was promised for this week. Jared was preaching this week.
Listen, Jared had everything this week. Literally everything.
So
it's coming.
Yeah. But if you would like to help out, you want to be part of something, if you're just curious about the community parties, you can message Jer. I'm sure he would love to get 100 emails about what's happening, which is like 100 emails to reply to, but you'd actually be excited.
That'd be so exciting. I'd be over. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's not from one person.
Yeah. That's Mark Dick. Send. I'm watching you.
I just started sending them, so you should get that.
Exactly.
It's so funny. Well, I think that wraps up our episode for you guys. It was so great having you. So great chatting this over with you guys. I always feel like I learn way more by talking it out. And so if you are a person who's listening to this and you haven't talked out the message with a neighbor, someone that you're in community with, then I encourage you to do that. You will get so much more out of church by being the best.
We call this our little small group.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's true. And so I encourage you to do that. If you don't know how to do that, or if you don't have people to do that with, contact one of us. We'd love to try and organize that for you to get you connected. But for this evening, I'm saying see you guys next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Good to be with you.